Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. Please pardon my raspy voice. Old man Collins feared his head this morning and caught me off guard, but I'm going to get through this as best as I can. Thank you for being with us. I would like to call the Nash County Board of Education committee meetings to order. The first committee that will convene will be the Administrative Services and Operations Committee. Mr. Dungeon.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. I will call to order Administrative Services and Operations Committee. I guess just for noting in the minutes, I'm present, Franklin's present, Dr. Chavis is present, and I believe virtual is Zach Gray. Is that correct? No. All right. So just the three of us here present. Our first item, the August 5th minutes from our last committee meeting were included in your board package. If everyone hopefully has had a chance to review those, I'll take a motion to approve.
Second.
Move to approve, Dr. Chavis, and second from Mr. Lamb. Any discussion on the minutes, changes, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed? Our first item on the agenda is information that Dr. Ellis is going to present around the annexation of the Nash Central Middle School.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
This is, like Mr. Dutton said, information only. This is a preliminary stage, but in the summer, board member Bissett brought up the annexation of Nash Central Middle School into the town of Nashville. I believe the conversation started because there are some housing developments behind Nash Central Middle School, which would be in Nashville. Testing. All right. So what we were going to do is just share with the board what this looks like. This is an application I'm just going to pass out. And me and Miss Miller, Dennis Fields, are going to talk to, I guess, the town of Nashville and see what this is about, what kind of conversation we'll have. This is just in a preliminary stage, but we just want to let you know. I believe there would be a cost savings to the district, which is a good thing, but I also believe we would have to be released from Nash County. So just letting you know, we're going to start that. We'll bring it to the board, probably in the committee meeting, probably the next committee meeting. And then if there's something to vote on, we'll vote on it. And if we have to bring one of their persons here to kind of explain, we'll do that. But I just want to make sure you're aware that we're going to start looking into this. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. Doesn't sound like there's a ton of information, but any questions for Dr. Ellis or his group on that? All right, the next item we have on the agenda is just some general information to be provided around LifeWise Academy.
So what I'll do is, if Ms. Smith wants to come up, I'll start this. So the last board meeting, LifeWise was speaking about coming into a school, and I believe it was Nashville Elementary. There's a little confusion around it, so what I thought the best thing we could do is I wrote a letter to the board about what was going on. Ms. Smith has met with me, and what I thought would be a good idea is to, I think she has a video we're going to play today. If there are any questions around this, this is just for information, it's not approval, but I think it'll be a good thing to explain the program and kind of really show how it looks like in a school. All right, so Tremaine, you want to show the video first?
That's fine.
Yeah, I think the video show first.
LifeWise Academy provides Bible education for public school students during school hours. This is possible because of a little-known law which allows students to be released from school during school hours to receive religious education, provided that the program is off-school property, privately funded, and parent-permitted. The LifeWise program is adaptable to the specific needs of each school and community, so every program looks a little bit different. Transportation and classroom facilities vary from community to community. We're in Elida, Ohio, where behind me is the local LifeWise program. The community here took an old house and they renovated it, and you can see it is an absolutely beautiful facility. Currently, volunteers and teachers are inside prepping for the day. They're actually in the middle of a prayer meeting. When that's done, they're going to head over to the local elementary school and pick up students to have their first class for the day. Behind me is Elida Elementary School. You can actually see volunteers getting the students ready. They're going to get them on this LifeWise shuttle, and then in a moment, they're actually going to bus them over to the local LifeWise facility where those volunteers will take them inside. Teachers will take students through about a 40-minute Bible-based character education class. They're going to learn about things like obedience and respect and truthfulness. They'll participate in singing activities, reading and writing.
New name, does anybody remember? It starts with an I. That's a hard question. It was a long time ago. Israel, good job.
And then when the classes are over, the volunteers are going to get them back on the shuttle, and then they're going to bus them back over to the local school where they will resume their normal daily activities. Let's join them. Hey guys, how are you? Good. You guys ready for LifeWise? Yeah. You can see the excitement of the students as they're getting ready to go over to the LifeWise class. You guys are excited, right? Each week, 376 Elida students participate in a LifeWise program. That's nearly 60% of the entire elementary school student body. The program hosts 2 classrooms each day, 3 times a day, 5 days a week, so that every student participates once each week. The LifeWise curriculum walks the students through the entire Bible during their time in elementary school. Students will start in Genesis in 1st grade and end their time in Revelation in 5th grade. Each lesson teaches a Bible story, explains how it connects to the bigger picture story of Jesus and how God's love can transform our character. LifeWise programs like this are popping up all across the nation. Every LifeWise looks a little bit different. The only question is, what will a LifeWise look like in your community? It only takes one person to take one step to get the ball rolling. Visit lifewiseacademy.org to get started.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. To get a LifeWise...
So I'll just reiterate that this is a parent permission. It's not affiliated with the school system. These kids their parents agree to this. They check them out of school for that amount of time and they bring them back. So, Ms. Smith, I'll let you
Okay.
do your speak.
Well, thank you again for having me. As mentioned in the video, LifeWise Academy is Bible education for public school children during the school hours. LifeWise is a released time instruction program that teaches Bible to public school students at all grades, from kindergarten all the way to 12. Released time is defined as a period of time which students are excused from the school to attend a course in religious instruction conducted by a private entity, which would be LifeWise in this case, off school property, privately funded, and parent permitted. So released time allows students to receive religious education in public school and honors the judicial doctrine of the separation of church and state by adhering to the guidelines established in the key U.S. Supreme Court decision Zorich and Clausen of 1952, which has been tested and has been upheld ever since. So I'd like to walk through the basics of LifeWise in a community. So how does one begin? There is a community interest list that goes around online, and 50 signatures obtained from the community in support for bringing a LifeWise program is what launches us into step 2. So step 1 is the 50 signatures. Step 2 would be the establishment of a steering committee, which is made up of community members that are established to work together with the LifeWise Support Center in Ohio and the local school district leadership to receive acknowledgement to launch a LifeWise classes in the school district. Upon receiving that acknowledgement, a local program director is then hired to oversee the launch process. And that program director works closely with school leadership and host sites, as well as hires and trains teachers and volunteers who will work in the program. As you already know, I've introduced myself as Christy Smith, the program director for Nash County. So with that said, one would assume that steps 1 and 2 are completed. But at the last board meeting, I promised you that I would work with integrity, and I will continue to do so. I was not a part of steps 1 and steps 2 in the process, so I cannot testify to the events that took place. I can also not testify to any conversations that may or may have not been had during that time. However, I think that all of us can agree that somewhere in the process there was a misunderstanding. This, of course, is unfortunate, but as myself, claiming to be a follower of Jesus, I believe that every circumstance, hardship, and even misunderstanding can be redeemed. I am truly grateful for the kindness that I have received from each person in this room. From Dr. Chavis, your smile at the last board meeting is just phenomenal, and it will calm the heart of any nervous wreck that stands before this board. So I am truly grateful for that. Thank you. And also for Dr. Ellis's kindness and others who have shown kindness and given encouraging words over the last few weeks. I'm truly grateful. I'm also grateful for your willingness to hear more about LifeWise at this point. And I pray that you join me, the LifeWise Support Center in Ohio, and my local team in hitting what I like to call the reset button, and that we can begin our conversations this evening. I would really like to take just a moment to focus on the 3 requirements for LifeWise to operate legally in a school district, those being off school property, privately funded, and parent permitted. And then I'll speak briefly about the current research, the curriculum, and finally touch on staff training for LifeWise employees. And in doing so, I hope that I'm able to answer some of the questions that you may have with respect to the LifeWise program. So let's talk about off-school property. Every school that begins a LifeWise program has to have a host site off campus that will host those classes. And so that host site that agrees for us to use their facilities to host LifeWise classes, they can be churches, they can be community buildings. In some instances across the United States, YMCAs have opened their doors for LifeWise to use their buildings. In some cases, as in the video that you saw, LifeWise can own their own property and build new structures for classrooms, or they can renovate and remodel pre-existing structures to use as LifeWise classrooms. Transportation to and from school and host sites may look different for each school depending on the distance. Students may walk if the distance to the host site is at or less than 1,000 feet. Students are transported in vans or buses, either leased by the host site or owned by LifeWise program if the distance is greater than 1,000 feet. The host site and any vehicles, vans, buses, shuttles are all evaluated for safety and will enter into usage lease agreements with the LifeWise legal team. In addition to parent permission being granted, which I'll touch on in just a moment, each parent or legal guardian of LifeWise student, each LifeWise student will also have agreed to terms and conditions of the release of liability and assumption of risk included in the LifeWise student enrollment permission slip online. This release of liability and assumption of risk will be in effect from the time the students leave the door of the school until they re-enter the school. Therefore, while students are with LifeWise, the school has no liability exposure. The program directors work closely with the school principals to schedule the classes to ensure that no student may be released or excused from a core curriculum subject course to attend a LifeWise class. And LifeWise classes generally meet, as mentioned in the video, once a week, with high school classes potentially meeting more than once a week due to credit hours being earned. So now let's move to the second part of that, which is privately funded. LifeWise is available to public school students at no cost to the local school district or to the families who have enrolled their students in LifeWise classes. All funds for LifeWise programs are provided by financial supporters in the community. And then parent permitted. Students are given permission to attend and are enrolled into LifeWise classes by their parents or legal guardians. Enrollment is often done online through the local LifeWise program page, but students can be enrolled by their parents or legal guardians at community events or churches where a LifeWise table or a LifeWise representative is present. Program directors and principals work closely together concerning verification of student enrollment into LifeWise classes, and principals receive copies of all necessary LifeWise enrollment forms for their records. Research and curriculum. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, and as reiterated by other speakers that evening, the positive impacts of the LifeWise programs in schools is very encouraging. With the research showing, again, increased attendance in year 1, decreased in-school and out-of-school suspensions in year 2 and 3, and projected academic improvements year 4 and after. If you're like me and enjoy data, I would encourage you to visit lifewise.org to review the third-party research if you would like more specific details. The curriculum. LifeWise uses a Bible-based character education curriculum. A 2024 national poll showed that 76% of Americans are in favor of teaching moral and character education to public school children, and 56% supported teaching public school children character lessons alongside biblical values, as long as it is with parent consent. Our curriculum combines both character education and Bible education. Some of the character qualities taught in the LifeWise classrooms are responsibility, trustworthiness, perseverance, courage, respect, self-control, truthfulness, and being teachable. The LifeWise teachers are well equipped to help students understand how to apply these character qualities in the public school classrooms. And a sample of our curriculum is available on our website. And for those who might be interested in looking at it further, you can request the review of the entire curriculum for 48 hours. Staff training. LifeWise prides itself in its training. All LifeWise employees and volunteers have completed background checks, as well as the child safety training and mandatory reporting during their onboarding process. This includes the LifeWise Leadership Board members. I know that was a lot in a quick moment, but I hope it's answered some questions that you may have about LifeWise and its functions in the school district. And at this time, I guess I will open it up to questions. And I will say that to some questions, I may not have the immediate answer, but as I told my students in my classrooms, if I might not know it at that moment, I'll go find the answer and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith. And before I open up the floor for questions, I was just going to ask Mr. Weber, are there any particulars to stick to? Do we direct them to Mrs. Smith? Do we direct them to Dr. Ellis? Are there things here that we want to make sure we, I guess, touch?
I don't know if this does sound good. So I think it's really at the board's discretion to direct your questions, whether it's to the presenter or Dr. Ellis. I think some of the key points that Dr. Ellis has previously shared, right, is this is 100% voluntary. It's something that districts do have the ability to allow or not, depending on what the decision is. I also think it's important just to highlight, what the board would need to consider would be whether what types of policy changes might be needed if the board were to, consider allowing students to leave campus for this type of purpose. So really, the question for the board is not so much about a particular program as much as whether you want to review and consider what changes might need to be made to authorize this 100% participation.
Okay. Thank you, Jason.
If you do have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those in the closed session.
Okay. In light of those comments, I open up the floor for questions or comments for either Dr. Ellis or Mrs. Smith. Dr. Chavis.
I think mine may be directed at Dr. Ellis. Regarding the hours, instructional hours, and she mentioned credit for time earned or credits earned, would this time impact what is required by the state for instructional hours?
So to me, when the discussion was about what class they would be missing, you can't miss a core class.
Right.
So what I'm thinking is So Melissa, if I get this right, K3, K5, K8, you have to have 2/3 of a day to be counted as an absence. High school would be totally different, it'd be a block of time, a period. So say if a kid was to volunteer in this program and be taken out of art class for 40 minutes, that would not affect his instructional day, because he would only be missing 40 minutes. So there's a lot of things here, we can unpack. The attendance policy, in the attendance policy, there is participation in a valid educational opportunity such as a service or legislative. So a valid educational opportunity. If you would consider this a valid educational opportunity, you probably wouldn't have to go to policy because you have something here. I'm sure we can talk. I'm saying, to me, a parent could take a child out at any time. You're not going to say you can't take your child out to go to the doctor, to dentist, or anything like that. So that's the way I'm thinking of it. If you don't, I'm trying to make it simple, but yet not too difficult. So
my question is more, are we going to meet what we need regarding the instructional hours
right.
for
If
the
it's
state?
only 40 minutes a week, that would be minimal.
And I think she answered she answered a lot of my questions. Great presentation, incidentally. But the transportation piece and the security of the students, she answered the question about the screening of staff and board members. Thank you for that. But what about the transportation piece? Is that facility in this particular case more than that 1,000 feet? And if we are putting them on a vehicle, whose insurance?
It wouldn't be ours. It would be
Okay.
LifeWise.
It would be like.
We wouldn't use our buses or transportation whatsoever. That's the whole
Okay.
point. We're not
Good.
involved in any of the transportation, curriculum. We don't have that. That's LifeWise.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very clear.
You good, Dr. Chavis?
I am fine.
Next. Ricky?
So, would a parent go say, I want to sign my kid up to attend the academy? What would they check out of music or something like that?
I think what LifeWise would have to do is have a specific time that this would happen. So that child would have to take advantage of when that block of time is. Now, in a high school, the way I would see it, I can't envision that yet. I can easily envision it in a 3rd or 4th grade class because electives are at a certain time. Bam, it's 10:30 for 3rd grade electives. They go. High school, I think, would have to be another conversation because the schedules are so, I don't know, they're just so different. But I think in an elementary or middle school, blocks of time is what they're used to. Elective times is what I'm thinking. Remediation time would be a block of time. So I think that's something that LifeWise would have to get with that principal and that school to determine, so what is the best time we can have this program? And I'm just guessing now.
Thanks.
Ricky? You good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Other questions, comments? Franklin?
The survey you did earlier on that, you had the data for that survey. I mean, what was the possibility?
The last time I checked the community interest list, we were at 351 signed signatures. That's those that went online for signatures. Those that signed cards and I had to manually put them in the system, we were well over 500.
What's the number of students in that?
Close to 600.
Almost 600.
Any other questions from Ms. Smith or for Dr. Ellis around LifeWise?
So the last thing I'm going to do is, this was one of the memorandum of agreement when I called I guess it would be the corporate office, Mr. Richard. Is that right? Ron. He told me some districts have a agreement with LifeWise that if you want to look at, I sent Jason something, I believe it was yesterday. I don't think he could open it, but I told him I would just pass these out. These were just some suggestions from him. Like I said, we're just going to kind of wait and see. We need to all look at it, and then go from there.
All right, Christy, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Next item on our agenda is Kelly Services contract and Dr. Sheila Wallace, if you have a minute to come down, it's the annual renewal of this contract. It does not sound like there are major changes to it, but maybe need to,
Mr. Clinton, if we can we get, Mr. Sanders up first?
if nothing, but nothing if we're not flexible. Mrs. Saunders, would you come and talk to us a little bit about some amendments to budget? Just a few items, but some of them had a fairly large price tag. So if you want to go through those, that would be great.
So what you guys have in the assembly is the budget amendment for Fund 2. I'm sorry, my head is on getting out of here. Do y'all have any questions about that budget? I'm so sorry.
The one I just at 12.8 million, the system-wide support services, just a little detail around that.
All right. So that is the initial, that is part of the resolution, that's part of the budget already. What you see here is a $550,000 change, which is the Edgecombe County appropriation that we were not anticipating. They began to send checks, and I called and inquired, what the check was for, and she said that in their budget ordinance, they had placed an appropriation for us, which they hadn't sent us notice before, but this is us adding that into our budget for this fiscal year.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's not their normal 2 million and some change. It's 550,000 for the students that are here, that remained in Nash.
Some gap funding there. Yeah. Any more questions?
I do, and
Dr.
just a
Davis?
little more clarification. So these are children that decided to grandfather to stay, that this money is following, or is this the money that?
I would love to answer that,
But
I'm sorry, go ahead, Doctor.
No, I don't know if we know. That's why when the money came in, their finance officer couldn't quite tell us.
Okay. All right.
So
But don't spend it till we're clear.
We cashed the check. That's it. We cashed the check, right?
I am waiting for a workup of how they came to that amount.
Okay.
And when they do send that, I'll be able to provide a little bit more information.
Thank you.
We are assuming that's the legacy piece. It's the other students that weren't accounted for, which is, I think, my 250, Dr. Fair, I'm thinking, something like that. Okay. So we're hoping that that's gonna be more explained to us when their finance officer, but
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jenkins, we
Don't
did
spend
cash
it
the
yet.
check, so we'll make sure that happens.
It's cash, but don't spend it yet.
We'll figure that out.
So on behalf of Dr. Ellis, I would ask if this can go to the full board for approval.
All right, if I can get a motion to recommend this to the full board for approval?
I move that we take this to the full board for approval.
Dr. Chavis, second from Franklin. Any discussion around this? All those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. And now,
She always seems so nervous.
Sorry, she had an emergency, so that was the reason for the adjustment.
understand.
So Kelly Services, it is time to renew the annual contract with them, and they are the vendor that provides substitutes for us. And we've had a few issues with the wording of the contract, but you should have the correct version of it uploaded now. And on behalf of Dr. Ellis, we do need approval for this.
Any questions for Dr. Wallace? Go ahead, Bill.
With the service contract, how effective have they been in retaining subs, and what's our substitute list look like? What's the quality of people coming out of that? Are they getting enough for us, or could you just?
Their approval rate ranges between 88% and 92% through the course of the year. And that's the fill rate of how they're meeting our needs of our vacancies. Very consistent. A lot of retirees work through them. And right now, I can say that we have many referrals or recommendations for substitutes that schools use on a regular basis.
So we're getting an 88
88 to 92% fill rate monthly.
Good. Any others? Dean?
Is there a way, is there a way to better vet some of them or all of them in a way? Received several complaints on them last year.
And they did an orientation this year, which has been different based on what their qualifications are. Ms. Fazio works very closely with HR to make sure that they follow our policies and they embed a lot of our requirements into that. But this is the first time that they really presented an orientation that all of the new candidates and existing ones had to go through. And that was held at Rocky Mount High this year.
No more jackets.
Yes, sir.
Great question. Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
I want to follow up on Dean's question, and he's saying we are getting complaints on some of the teachers coming in themselves. Do you got data to substantiate that and how many there are that we're getting filled that the complaints he's talking about or he's referring to?
I'm assuming you're talking about the one that made media news, or were there more than that?
Yeah, I don't want to assume that. I want to know if we got data to substantiate the question he's talking.
I'm sorry, we do have data. I get that information, and I only had 4 complaints last year.
Only 4. Out of how many folks do we retain?
They have over 200 substitutes.
So that's less than 0.5% that you get complaints of. Okay, thank you.
To make a note, if I may, and I understand following the data, that's very important, but board members get individual calls, and I think it's fair to ask the question. I've had only one, and it was nothing that I thought was crucial, so I didn't bring it to you because I figured it would work its way out. But we do get calls sometimes too, so I think he had a valid question, but my question, or the call I got was from teachers who were concerned that a person was too young right out of high school and been placed back in the school assisting students he was in class with the year before. And it worked out well. I visited the school. He seemed to be doing a great job, but it was a little awkward to have him in with his peers from last year. But I think he did a good job, but I did get questions regarding that. But I don't think that would have reflected in a negative data type situation.
Thank you. And that's what I'm trying to do, negative as far as employees that we're hiring. So it seems like it's a really low percentage of that. It may be situations, may be awkward, but there's a lot of situations we deal with each and every day that seem to be awkward, but we work through them. Thank you.
Just to address the comment that you received.
I think you may know which school.
I do know, and we did change that, whereas any substitute had to be 25 plus going into high schools.
Other questions? Dr. Ross, I was just I know you don't know the impact on this, but just because you had mentioned it with ESSER funding ending, can you just kind of give the board a little bit of that potential impact based on the prior 2 years?
So we were able to fund Kelly Services using ESSER funding, and we no longer have ESSER funding. So we have a limit that we have to remain within through our budget from the state, so we cannot exceed that. Last year, I had to come back to you, the last 2 years, I had to come back to you to ask for an extension because we exceeded that amount that we initially had, and we cannot afford to do that this year. So we're monitoring a lot closer, and we're also making sure that we're trying to fill these vacancies as quickly as possible because we do not have the room to serve all of the long-term subs that we've had previously. And that was due to a lot of vacancies too.
I know that's hard to forecast the first week of school, but I guess it does stand to maybe impact us at some point. If nothing else, can I get a motion to recommend this to the full board for approval?
I make the motion that we recommend it to the full board.
Second. Looking at you again, Franklin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to recommend to the board carries. And that was the only items I had for our committee today. Anything else for the good of the group? Hearing none, I will go ahead and adjourn the Administrative Services and Operations Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gunnington. We will now, the next policy to convene will be the next policy. next committee, to convene will be the policy committee. And today, Mr. Dunton is substituting, filling in for Ms. Evil, the policy committee chair. Mr. Dunton?
Yeah, I think they say in golf, keep hitting while you're hot. The only item we really have is the approval of our minutes. That was in part of your board package. I'm sorry, we have Mr. Edwards is with us, Dr. Washington is with us, and do we have Zach Tremaine? No, Zach. So, and I'm present, so we do have 3 to form a quorum. If everyone's had a chance to review the minutes, if I can get a motion for approval.
Second.
Mr. Edwards, Dr. Washington, second. Any discussion? Any corrections or changes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are going to have, I think, Dr. Farrow and Mr. Ward come speak to us a little bit about some of the discussions that we had in our prior committee meeting last month.
Good evening to all of our board members. We just wanted to reiterate the policies that went forward at our last committee meeting. There were a lot of moving parts, and so we just wanted to remind the board of those moving parts and the decisions that were made in our last policy committee meeting. First of all of our policies from the spring were in their final read and had been approved. The thing that I want to really touch on, though, that I want you all to pay attention to, is that there was a waiving of the second reading and the approval of the repeal of policy 1725, 1726, and 7232 on their first reading. Policy 1725 and 1726 were repealed, and there was a new policy, 1725, that the North Carolina School Board Association passed down. 7232, some of that language was folded into policy 1710. So the board approved the repealing of policy 1725, 1726, and 7232, and the board approved that on the first reading. The second was the waiving of the second reading and the approval of policy 1710, 1720, and the new policy I spoke of, 1725, which replaced policy 1725 and 1726. And there was also policy 4023, where the second reading was waived and the policy was approved on the first reading, with the addition of the following provisions to be inserted at the end of policies 1720, 1725, and policy 4023. And what went into at the end of those policies was that we're given the ongoing litigation regarding the scope and effect of the federal regulations related to Title IX, the process of investigating and adjudicating any complaints of sexual harassment on sex-based discrimination shall follow the applicable requirements of federal law then in effect, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in this policy. All reports of alleged sexual harassment or sex-based discrimination shall be routed to the Title IX coordinator as soon as practicable, who will contact the relevant parties and shall be responsible for assuring compliance with the applicable regulations in the consultation with legal counsel as necessary. And I believe this addendum was advised by Mr. Weber to put in at the end of those three policies. And again, those three policies where this language was inserted was 1720, 1725, and 4023. There was also the waiving of the second reading and approval of policy 1510 on this first reading. And then there was the approval of policy 4329, 1500, 1600, 1700, 1742, 1760, 2500, option B, 4040, 7335, and 7820 for the first reading, and for them to lay on the table for 30 days, which will go before the full board on September the 5th. questions?
So just in summary, I think I'm right here. In that first group that you were referencing, those were approved in committee and then approved in the following board meeting, which was done immediately thereafter with outlaying for 40 days. So those are in place.
That's correct.
The second group that you just will have next Thursday when we meet as a board for final approval.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Questions for Dr. Farrow or anyone else? Thank you very much. That was for information only. So that concludes policy, I do believe, with no actions required. Any more discussion, conversation around that for the committee? Hearing none, I will adjourn the policy committee. Dr. Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Dunton. The next committee that will convene is the Student Support Services and Operations Committee. I believe Mrs. Thomas Wolf is joining us remotely.
Yes, good evening. So at this time, I will go ahead and call the Student Support Services and Operations Committee to order. Roll call, Dr. Chavis.
Here.
Mr. Edwards.
Here.
Mr. Sharp.
Here.
And Mr. Jenkins.
Here.
And I am here. Excuse me. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the August 5th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. We'll move on to the 3 items. They are all for information only. We don't have any action items this week. So we can go ahead and get started with Ms. Grant, Ms. Aycock.
Mr. Thomas Bullock, for the record, can you take a vote on that item, please? It was moved and properly seconded.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll carry it for you. All in favor, please let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. I'm out of my element today.
No problem.
Good evening.
Evening.
As Dr. Washington, not Dr. Washington, Ms. Bullock stated, we are going to give you just an overview of Infinite Campus. As a state, we have moved from our student information system being Power School to Infinite Campus. Of course, that would work if we turn it on. Okay. So North Carolina is rolling out the new student information system in 2 phases. There was a phase 1 for this school year and phase 2 for 24-25. So all of the PSUs that you see shaded are in blue are the regular traditional LEAs who are now in phase 1. So we did opt into phase 1. And so we felt like with phase 1, there was a lot of technical support that was being given to the school districts, knowing that there were going to be some things that we were going to need to provide some feedback to for the state and to help get better. So also being able to have that ground level say in what happens in phase 2 and moving forward with the state. So we're just giving you a big view tonight. There's no way we could go in depth with the full adoption of what we've gone through as a state or as the district in terms of Infinite Campus. So we're going to give you a touch tonight, and if there's further information you'd like, we'd be glad to prepare that for you. Sorry, So Infinite Campus was awarded the RFP from the state as the new system. And so we have been working with the State Department, or I have been a part of that RFP process for approximately 5 years now. So this has been going on for a while. It had to go through legislation and get approved. And so, and we're doing this in phases. So there's some things that we're managing and starting in the program this year, and there's some things that we've chosen to wait until the following year to do. So we were keeping we got to pick and choose at this stage what we wanted to participate in and what we wanted to hold off and wait till phase 2 to do. The one thing we do like about, and I'm going to let Caroline talk about this, is with Power School, we were paying for additional options. So if we
utilized PowerSchool for our student information system, if we did online registration for our parents, that was an extra fee. If we had a sandbox for us to try things in before, so we wouldn't mess up the live site, that was an extra fee. If we wanted to send documents to parents and have a messenger feature, that was an extra fee. The one thing that we really like about Infinite Campus is all encompassing to the district. There is no extra cost to all the different components that you're about to hear about.
So these are the different modules that are in the state contract with Infinite Campus. The only one that's not is in red, and that's the food services. So we're not necessarily, as a school district, going to all of these this year, like Ms. Grant said, but these are options for possibly phase 2 or the following year, or when our contracts have expired with these vendors. Our implementation team consists of Christy Grant, Jeff White, Tremaine McQueen, Mr. Whitley, Ms. Wiggins, and myself. Rod has been our project manager through this, and as a team, we meet very often. You'll see our task rate in just a moment. So this is what we've seen for the past 5 or 6 months, all of the meetings and tasks that have been done in the background to make this go as smoothly as possible. And so this was just kind of a view that a lot of people might just want to take a look at. As far as training, Miss Yolanda Wiggins on the team led our training, and Infinite Campus has a blended learning approach. So staff would watch modules and take an assessment at the end, and then they're also given a live Q&A session. We've had one of those for teachers and staff, or teachers just a few weeks ago, and then we have another in a couple of weeks once they get their feet wet with the system. And we've had those for other groups as well in the system. Our training, Ms. Wiggins had a great training plan. It might be linked somewhere in the slide deck, but it is very role specific for our clerical staff, all the way up to our administrative staff, all the way up to our SIS administrator, Mr. Whitley, and it says exactly what each person should take so that they are prepared for the switch over to the system. We've been to principal meetings, roundtables, our leadership during the summer, and talked about this to try to inform everyone of the changes.
We also were able to host NC Bold this year at the state level, and a lot of our administrators and our staff participated in NC Bold, and were able to get some more hands-on 2-day, I believe it was, a 2-day training on different sessions that they wanted to attend. Will you also talk about the champions?
Yes. So each principal has selected an Infinite Campus or 2 Infinite Campus champions, and so I talk to them very regularly to get the information out to staff. So if there's something that is not working or something that they need to do differently than what was put out all staff, then I get it to them and they get it to the staff very quickly. Those are the go-to people in the building for the Infinite Campus. Specifically, when we're talking about teachers, is grade book and attendance. So those are the go-to people in the district or in the school system for that, and then they come directly to me if they have any questions. So another layer of support. Our campus parent and campus student in PowerSchool, our previous student information system, we had parent portal, and we had, I don't know if it was called student portal, but students were able to access it through their NC Ed Cloud, which is how they get to a lot of their curriculum resources. This is the same. It actually offers more to parents than what PowerSchool did previously. And so we have been working behind the scenes, Mr. Whitley, the data managers, myself, everybody on the implementation team, to get these codes out to parents. The problem that we were finding was that email addresses were not in there appropriately. So that is what the data managers have been working really hard at the school level to get their demographic information cleaned up, so that and Mr. Whitley has set up a daily push to any parents who have not signed up for the parent portal, so that if they were added on Monday, then Tuesday, the next push, they would get it that morning to their email. And from the parents I've spoken to, it has been a very easy process, and I did it myself as a parent.
The one last thing we will say is we are not going to stand up here and make it sound like everything's been butterflies and roses. We've had some challenges, but what we've done is taken all the information and put a plan of action in place to address it. And that's kind of what we can do right now. I think on the instructional side, Caroline's been working really hard with her instructional people and the contacts within the schools to make sure that we can get access. We are continuously 24/7 on the phone trying to get DPI, and they've been very responsive late at night to us on how to get access to the instructional resources that our staff really needs. We found out some things when City High and Early College started, and we're able to start working on those already in advance, knowing our other students were starting this week. So we have also worked with Dr. Farrow and are looking at what are some ways that we can offer some sessions to parents, whether that is in a virtual manner or at the school sites or even at the district levels, to come and let us help you, do some hands-on. How do we link your students? How do we get your email addresses right? How do we have your demographic? Come to us and we will help do what we can. Because it is a different system. This does not replace, there's been some confusion with Apogee and rooms, this does not replace the teachers having the room set up. That's still a great resource for our district and our families, and that is continuing. They will only access their grades and attendance through Infinite Campus. All the other communications is pushed out at the school level and through the teacher level will continue to go through rooms. So some of that is some communication that we're going to help push out to clarify, and I believe there was something pushed out yesterday about that, and that's just kind of the start of where we are. When we think we've pushed it out enough, we still know we have a little bit more to do. So, do you have any questions for us? We will try our absolute best. Mr. Whitley's last day is tomorrow, so we're going to do great.
I have a question, and I think you had one as well, but I'll be brief. I know with this technology piece, the students will catch it and move through with no trouble. The parents are going to be your hard ones to work with. My concern is in District 1, where I serve, there is very poor internet and how are we working? I had someone say, well, we put it on the internet. Well, a whole bunch of my parents can't even get on the internet. So how are we dealing with or addressing that? Are there hot spots or any kind of solutions or thoughts?
It's fun. Yeah, it's app-based. The system is app-based, and that was the same with Power School, so there's no difference there. But on the instructional side, as we're gearing up this year for phase 1, we will be printing progress reports and report cards, and that is a change. So for our non-internet folks, they would be able to get it in paper form.
Right, and I hate to say, at my house, I have a brand new phone, but I have to sit in that window. If I move 2 inches, I'm dropped. So I know that my neighbors are having that same problem.
Like that if we go to the southern end of one of the schools, if we don't get on the network within that school, we do. And we also have where the parents can come to the schools and get print off and get their codes and access things there at the school level.
So I keep hearing phase 1. What's phase 2? Why is it phased? What's that look like?
It's phased because the way that the rollout was set up through the State Department was in a 2-part process to not have the whole entire state at one time. So we, Mr. Whitley, or one person in our district at this point still has access to Power School, which is the historical knowledge for, for everything for, I don't even know how long.
10 years.
Yeah, because it was like NCPS before, but way before that. And so, if we would have gone in and rolled it out just then it was like you cut everything off and then start this. So the state wanted to keep the contract with Power School to get everybody through the rollout and phase in of Infinite Campus. So at the end of 24-25 phase 2, there will be no more access to the system that we've currently used as a state for 10 years. It's kind of like an extra layer of support, like we know we're here, but at least we have the safety of this. Yes, backup right now.
I got two questions. Wasn't for Chris, but basically we did the same thing with Power School. Because of the number of counties that you got, it's an overload. And you can't overload the system trying to train everybody at once. Legislation or the district DPI don't have enough staff to do that. So that's one of the reasons why they did it. My other question is, we talked about champions. And that's great. Now, did we talk about champions per school when it comes to that? I probably overlooked it, but you say every school has a champion?
Yes, sir. Every school has 2 champions. For our K-2, their grade book's going to function a little bit differently than our 3 through 13. So I've made sure if it is a K-5 school or 412 school for NETA, then we have a K-2 person and someone grades 3 and up. So for our high schools, that's just 2 core content folks that assist in getting grade books set up, and it's a very simple process. We've sent out guidance to them. We've done a lot on the district level. That's one good thing about Infinite Campus, that we were able to do a lot of the setup on our own, especially for the elementary, since they have a set percentage of testing projects and other assignments, whereas secondary is a little bit different. So they just have to set up that one part on their own.
Follow up, I think, hit on what Donald was talking about. I think you guys did a great job in rolling this out. I've seen it talk to some folks as far as how they understand it. But one of the issues that you said you have is asking Donald about the parents, getting the parents involved. And we thought about having someone, when we have the PTA, PTOs, just having a champion within the PTO, PTA, whatever group, what they call them now, to actually help us in this process.
You definitely can. I mean, any of the schools, and I'm not sure if they did this or not, but had tables set out, or I know they're going through working really hard to verify the email addresses. If the email addresses is not updated, that's one of the biggest things we're seeing right now, is parents saying, I'm not getting anything. And when we look in the system, it was an email from like I still have a Hotmail, like back in the old days of the Hotmail account, and now I moved on to Gmail. Well, I forgot I even had that email account, because it's so reliant right now on having that current information. And I know the schools have done a push during some of their open houses with, is this information correct? Is there anything we need to update and change? But there are, as we're moving through this, rolling out, now we're seeing, let's talk with parents more about the resources and how that's kind of working here. We talked about the basics in terms of how you're going to get grades, how you're going to get access to your students' report cards and whatnot. Let's talk a little bit more about and go in depth to some of the premium products that we have.
I know we have a great collaboration with our PTOs. Some are really good, and we got really good leadership with inside PTOs. And
That's
they're
a great idea.
really brainchild students in there, or parents, and we can utilize those to help in the community, like a roundtable coffee discussion.
So Ms. Royster, who runs the Family Ambassadors, that's one of the topics they're going to address, because they gave us some good ideas last year as to how to push all this. I know when Ms. Finch was doing rooms, trying to figure out, Family Ambassadors kind of showed us, you might want to think of this. So that's going to be one of the first topics we discuss. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Carol.
Transportation.
Transportation.
Yeah, it broke up a little bit. Technology, right? Next.
Don't y'all look so excited?
I'm trying to get.
You can go ahead. So I want to talk about where we are in transportation for the 24-25 school year. I would like to say before I get started talking about transportation, we felt like that we were in a much better place this school year in terms of being able to get a vast majority of our students who wanted transportation at least put on a bus. Now, the bus is running in the manner in which we want them to run. That's a whole nother issue. But as it relates to getting students on buses, we have had a much more efficient process this year. The other thing that I want to say is, and as I go through this presentation, you're going to see some of the issues that we are having are the same old issues. And those issues are not going to get better until there's a way that the State Department or DMV figures out how to get bus drivers their license in a quicker manner. I know many of you know, or all of you know, the old adage, you can't get blood from a turnip. And many of the issues that we are facing, it comes right down to we don't have enough drivers. And without enough drivers, you cannot effectively run a transportation department. And so as you're going to see when I'm speaking through some of this presentation, that it talks directly to the lack of drivers that we have this year. I believe we've lost, it was either 7 or 9 drivers between June and August for various reasons. And as we all know, again, it's not just Nash County, it's happening all over the state, all over the country. But I feel for us, it's a much tougher process when you have 28 people who you get trained, and then those people, maybe 10 of them, will be able to drive a bus by the end of the school year. That's not efficient, and that does not help us in our quest for what we want to do as it relates to student transportation. So with that being said, our opt-in request for transportation for the school year, we opened for families on July 1st through August 4th. It was reopened on August 12th so that schools could assist. We had, as of Monday, I believe it was, we had 6,903 students routed on buses. There were 164 students in workflow, and those students were there due to the various reasons that you see there. Some of them were McKinney-Vento students who we're trying to get special transportation for. Some were incorrect addresses. Some were EC students who were trying to get transportation for. And then some of those being shuttle routes where we have teachers at certain schools who a bus may be going from Southern Nash High School to Southern Nash Middle. That kid is at Southern Nash Middle. They hop on the bus and they go over there. Requests for transportations are still ongoing and are currently being processed. So bus drivers, number of drivers that work both AM and PM. We have 96 this year, and we're down from 106 last year at the start of school. Number of drivers that work either AM or PM is 13, and we're up from 5 last year. So we have 13 of our drivers, they either drive in the morning or they drive in the afternoon. They may drive in the morning and they can't drive in the afternoon because they have a job. So it's that kind of thing. We need a total of 124 AM and PM drivers. As you see, we have 96. And when I say we need a total of 124, that means we need a total of 124 to make things run efficiently. That means that buses would leave on time, they would be able to pick children up, and our high school, elementary, and middle would get to school on time. What we would really like to see is that our high school and our middle schools are paired, because our high schools is our earliest start, our middle schools are our latest start. And we really would like to have elementary with their own drivers. Right now, we can't do that because of the sheer number of shortages that we have as it relates to our drivers. So we have drivers right now who are driving high school. They finish a high school route, they drive an elementary route, they finish an elementary route, and they drive a middle school route. So you know what's happening. That means that elementary might be getting there on time, but our middle school students are getting to school late. And I don't want to say this to despair our drivers, because we have some committed bus drivers in this district. They're committed, they get up every morning, they go and they get on that bus, they make sure that our children get to school on time, get there safely as much as possible, and then they make sure that they get home in the afternoon. But it does not help the transportation department when we have some drivers who call out at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, or 7 o'clock in the morning, when you already down 24, 30 drivers. And so those are some of the issues that we're trying to work through. And again, I'm not trying to make disparaging remarks about any of our bus drivers, because I believe that the work that our bus drivers do is godly work. It takes patience. It takes commitment to get on a bus and drive 50 or 60 children. But I'm just talking about the issues that we face in the transportation department. Number of sub-drivers that we have is 3. Buses without drivers for the start of the 24-25 school year. We're saying that that's around 22, but that number is actually probably higher than that. Mr. McQueen? Transportation has a total of 143 buses for the 24-25 school year. So 15 of that 143 are new buses. Of those, nine of them have already arrived to Nash County Public Schools, and we're waiting on the other 6. New buses have to be outfitted with GPS, cameras, and radios. We have 11 buses that are designated as spare buses. So right now, of that 143, 11 of them are designated as spare buses. And then we have what we call 132 route buses. And of that 132 route buses, 17 of those are identified as park buses. And that means that those buses can be used as either spares or route buses as needed. Yeah. Teacher assistants, there are 25 TAs that need to be trained in the classroom and behind the wheel training. Applicants are still applying. However, due to the amount of time that it takes for a person to go through the class, go through the behind the wheel training, and then get their license, right now we're only focusing on our staff members. So if you are a TA or you are a teacher, we're trying to get your license, those are the individuals that we're focusing on. Again, because we can't get people trained through the entire process and with their license and an efficient amount of time. So it would not be good for us to bring someone in from the outside, get them trained, and then they never get their license. As I said earlier, those 25 TAs, we have a class, our first class is on September the 3rd through the 5th. Of those 25 TAs, and I'm willing to bet my paycheck on this, of those 25 TAs, less than 10 of them will have their license by the end of the school year.
What do you attribute that to?
Because DMV can't get to them. Because when those 25 TAs are trained, when they go through that 3-day class, then DMV has to come back. First of all, they have to pass. They pass. DMV has to come back, and then they have to do the 2 days behind the wheel. Well, they're only doing 2 at a time. And the trainer for Nash County Public Schools isn't just Nash County Public Schools. They train for Weldon, they train for Halifax, and who else, Mr. Body?
There's some charter schools that train for as well.
So there is a person who is designated for Nash County Public Schools, but we're not the only school district that they're working with.
Every school district is the same, but.
Sorry. Yep. So the approximate time that it takes for a driver candidate to take the classroom training and the driving training and to be cleared to drive a bus is approximately 3 months. I do want to go back to clarify a point. If someone from the outside comes in and they already have an S&P endorsement, then those individuals we will focus on because that means we just need to get their license changed over to Nash County Public Schools. So once a TA has been fully licensed to drive.
What's an S&P endorsement?
School and passenger.
So what did they?
School bus and passenger endorsements.
Correct. Okay.
Thank you, sir. So once our TAs have been fully licensed to drive, we will add buses to our elementary schools to relieve the strain of drivers having to drive for high, elementary, and middle. As I said a while ago, remember, what we really want is to have drivers who drive for our high schools and our middle schools. High schools is the earliest start time, middle school is the latest start time. Elementary, we want those drivers to just be focused on elementary. Right now, we have many of our drivers who are driving high school, elementary, and middle. Questions for me?
Yes, age limit still 18?
Is it 18, Mr. Byer?
21.
21.
21. Is that a federal law or state law?
I believe that's state.
State.
That's state, right, Mr. Byer?
Correct. Because, you know, it's hard to believe that if we could get the state to, the parents could get the state to reduce the age of drivers. I can remember I had enough
Students.
high school drivers. We had 5 drivers per high school drive a bus that would help our short. And to be sure, we got enough responsible kids, 18 years old, to drive a doggone school bus.
That's a good question.
I'm just-
Something wrong, if we could get the age reduced.
Times are so different now. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have to piggyback on what he just said, but have we also looked at some of the fill-in companies like Hop, Skip, and Drive and Whoops Transportation? And like when we don't have, like substitute teachers, you do have these systems and companies that support school systems. Have we, I don't even know if they're in this area, but have we looked?
I know at one point, Mr. Byer, last school year, we were looking into some of that, but I think, and Mr. Byer, correct me if I'm wrong, bringing them in and working with that particular company, the financial side of it would have been more of a strain on us. Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is the time to ask the, I'm getting a ton of complaints. I'm getting more complaints this year than I've had in 10 years. And I rode by a couple schools open first day and everything, and I ride by Rocky Mountain Middle because, you know, we combined everything, and I look and there's 3 school buses out there with the hoods pulled back. Don't know if they were broke down or whatever. And I look online and we've got mechanics available. I mean, vacancies. What are we doing to fill these? Are we going anywhere to recruit these diesel mechanics or anything? Because this is really putting a burden on the staff that's over there, being they're posted June 4th, but they don't close until October 31st. That's a long time to be without mechanics.
So one of the things that we did, as you know, transportation received their own funding. So Mr. Byer last school year worked with Ms. Wallace and her department to try to give a little bit of a higher funding for our diesel mechanics. Because if you look at what an entry-level diesel mechanic makes coming into the school system and what they can make in the private sector, it's not even close. Like, I think entry level, they're making maybe 32, 35, Mr. Byer. So they could go in the private sector and make 2 times that. So Mr. Byer worked with Ms. Wallace and her team to try to increase. He also put in if mechanics get a certain, if they go to a training, they get a certain endorsement, then based on the endorsement they could get a higher rate of pay. The problem is just like it seems to be with everything. Mechanics aren't out there. And when I tell you Mr. Byer has gone to the community college, he's worked with them, he's worked with our CTE department for those who in auto mechanic class to try to bring in. We're working with a company right now. I know we had 2 or 3 individuals from that company who was working. I think we're in the process of trying to hire one of those full-time, Mr. Byer. They're not out there. And part of the reason that they're not out there is because they're not going to leave the private sector and come and work for Nash County Public Schools when they can make 2 times, 3 times more than what we can pay them.
I just know we talked about, you know, recruiting bus drivers, and I didn't want those folks to be left out. At least they know that we are trying. I mean, I agree that the money's.
I will say this about Mr. Byer has tried everything that he knows to do. We go to transportation meetings. We meet with other leaders from other school districts. We try to get ideas from them, but we're all in the same boat. You know, some are a little bit better because they have more money that they can put on the table. But even in Wake, as you can see, Wake put a ton of money on the table for bus drivers, and they have bus driver shortages.
State's got all the turnip seed.
A couple other things that I'm hearing is, I've got one person who said they filled out numerous transportation requests, 3 of them to be exact, and still don't know what bus their kids ride. Said they were on hold for an hour and 40 minutes the other day just to leave a message, and still has not heard anything back from transportation or anything. And the other day, I got a call. I thought, used to when I had elementary kids, which has been a long time ago, they would call me and tell me the bus was late, we didn't have a driver. This lady, when she finally got hold of school, they said, oh, that bus don't have a driver today. And she's sitting there waiting, staying at home with her kid till she gets on the bus, and it's just, it's very inconvenient.
Right, there are some issues around communication. We own those issues at the district level and at the school level. That's to be carried by both levels. But one of the things that we have asked parents to do is that if they're having an issue with their bus, their call should be to the school.
And that's where she finally found out. But we don't send, or there's no.
So we're supposed to send out, if we find out that a person is not going to drive a bus, and let's say at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 7 o'clock in the afternoon, then the transportation department is going to send that message out. If it's happening during the morning or the school day, then the school is responsible for sending that message out. Part of our problem this year has been because we've transitioned to this new student information system, right? And so, just like many things that's been impacted by that, our ability to mass communicate from transportation has also been impacted by that. I was talking with Mr. Byer this morning, and he has been in contact with the people from Bus Planner, trying to see where they are and making sure that we can get our information transferred over so that it can go out as it needs to be. Right now, I haven't had a conversation with Mr. Byer this afternoon, but as of this morning, we still did not have that capability. So that is one thing that we're trying to get fixed on our end. But there should be some level of communication. I know some schools were sending out emails to students who were on those buses. If a parent has an email connected with that student, I think that should go out to them as well. But that is a thing that we're trying to work through, and one of the things that we hope to clean up within the next week.
All right. Can we have some consistency, whether it's an email, a phone call, or what? Let's do one or the other, or
ideally, what our process is to do a phone call. But as I said, right now, we don't have that ability to mass communicate. So I will get with Mr. Byer on tomorrow, find out exactly what schools are doing, find out where we are in terms of our ability to mass communicate, and then we will continue to work through that. But please make sure if parents are calling you about a situation with their bus, they truly need to speak with the school. Mr. Byer's team, all of them have been on buses this week. All of them.
I wouldn't have his job. I ain't gonna lie about that. But I guess the thing that's frustrating is, and the route. Have we looked at that? Because from what I'm hearing, there's one bus picks up same school here, that picks up same kids, school kids here. Have they looked at that in over this period? And when this lady signed up for a school bus, the kids where the school bus stopped last year, they're no longer in middle school, they're in high school. And I was just wondering, why can't we look where this young little girl don't have to walk all the way around the corner? It goes right by our house. It's the road, you go in one way, you go that way, and it comes back right out the other way. I was just asking, can we rearrange where the stops are into little square?
So first, routes are There are rules and regulations that when Mr. Byer and his team are putting together routes, that they try to follow. Part of the phase that we're in the first week of school, and then going into the second week of school, right? So some of the stuff that we're gonna find out is that, hey, instead of there being 40 kids on this bus, there are actually only 18. And there's another bus that's coming over this way too, and that bus only has 20 kids on it. See if we can't condense this bus. So that's some of the stuff, some of the information that the transportation department is taking in now so that they can continue to try to make changes to routes to make it more efficient. I don't know if that answers your
I mean, I've asked them, I said,
Mr.
just bear with us a week or so.
But,
I mean, it happens but this year just seemed like it's been
and
all on me.
And
I don't know if y'all been getting called or not, but everybody's called me. Or either y'all ain't answering the phone, one of them. I'm answering the phone.
I gave him the number.
I think you did.
I think I
gave him a number too.
And
What they're called?
And we also want to say, we understand that this is incredibly frustrating for parents.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing.
Who want to get their children on buses. We certainly understand that. But Mr. Byer and his team, I can assure you, they are not trying to make this intentionally tough for parents.
And nobody said that, honestly.
He's dealt a tough hand, and they're trying to work through it the very best that they can.
Next week's gonna be another week, because most of the parents came from school the first week, and then they all want to go on bus second week.
Well, I wasn't trying to make you a punching bag.
Sir, no.
I looked at Dr. Ellison, he's not want to hear all this.
I was prepared.
Oh, gosh. I got one, but
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is easy. I know in the past, we had a system where parents they would call me at 6 in the morning or earlier and say, where's my bus? And they didn't have internet, but I could go online and kind of get their address in and give them some idea if it was on the road, or I couldn't tell them exactly where it was in terms of how many minutes. But is there any way they can track it a little bit by internet if they got it?
So guess what?
We don't.
We don't have that no more either.
We have it, but it's not working well. And
Are we paying for
so
it?
Mr. Byer and I have had a conversation. Mr. Byer this week has been looking into another platform. And so Mr. Byer's intent, if everything lines up, is to try to have another platform in place by September the 9th so that parents can use to track the bus. Because what we're currently using, it did not work well last year, the year before, and already we're having some issues.
And can we know what that company is so we can hopefully get rid of that contract?
You ain't got to worry about that.
So it's the same company that we use to track the buses already in transportation. So if we give the information to the principals and everybody in transportation, we use Where's the Bus tracking system. Well, we had this Chipmunk app from Bus Planner that we were using that's not working.
Chipmunk app?
It's a Chipmunk. So what we're doing is we just changing from Chipmunk to Where's the Bus parent app. So it'll be the same GPS tracking system that we have now. Next week, we're gonna start doing a health check first and making sure all our equipment is actually tracking correctly.
Well, before I leave, I'm gonna give you this name.
Okay.
She said she's registered 3 times and still don't know what bus her kids ride. So I'm gonna give you this name before we leave. If you just enter, I got her number. I just want the kids to get to school.
Quick question, is Here Comes the Bus the same thing as Where Is My Bus? They're
No,
two
ma'am.
different- Okay.
We used to have Here Comes the Bus, but that didn't work either.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
I'm just stated to Rick, when they call you, just send them to them.
But it can't
Sit on
get
hold for
through.
an hour and 40 minutes.
Who's gonna hold the phone for an hour and 40 minutes?
Somebody who really loves your kids.
I'm gonna take
I
my
would.
kid to school, right? An hour and 40 minutes. But I'm gonna tell you this. I was at Benville with Steph the other day, and there was a bus there. Kid didn't get picked there. They bought the kid. Parent was there. Mrs. Tetford and her crew handled that immaculately. They did a phenomenal job with it, and they actually worked out with your group. So you've only been in school for 3 days. 3 days. So there's some hiccups that's gonna come along the way in 3 days. they're trying to work through that process. You know you got bus driver shortages, and the parents know that too. So you got to be a little bit patient with this process, and you're working through that. It's not like you're throwing your hand back drinking coffee all day long, I don't think. So I would say I understand the problem, I understand the issue, and parents got to understand that too.
And I'll give him your number.
Give it to him. Ricky, give it to him.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things that we have not looked at, or I think we have looked at, but we're failing at, is this planning and this routing system. I know we're short drivers, I know it's the first, I know it's the same thing every year, but we are repeating some of the mistakes that we made last year with our routing. For instance, I see a bus from Nash Central Middle School come in the same neighborhood, 2 buses from the same school come in the same neighborhood. Why? That's happening in multiple places. I looked at a routing today from my high school that said we're gonna start at said time and we're gonna finish at like 2:36. That elementary route that it's gonna pick up after that said it begins at 3:02 or 2:02. So you knew with your routing system right off the bat, if nothing went wrong, you were 34 minutes behind.
So if you remember what I said.
I remember.
Hold on. The plan is to have high school with middle school, elementary with their own routes. We can't do that because we have a shortage. So you have to have high school drivers who drive a high school route, drive an elementary route, and then drive a middle route.
I get that.
So,
but when
Let him finish, Mr. Bissett.
but
Mr.
when you look
Bissett,
at
please
the
let him finish.
So,
Mr. Bissett, let
I
him
got
finish
you.
and then you can go.
He didn't answer my question, but go ahead, Ms. Farrow.
I'm answering your question. So when you say that we go in knowing that, yes, we go in knowing that, because we know that drivers have to drive high school, elementary, and middle. We don't have enough drivers.
The school I'm looking at, every bus has a driver, and I see that. But the point I'm making is, you come out of the gate knowing you're 34 minutes behind on your schedule. Adjust your schedule.
What
The
school are you
parents,
looking at?
Hubbard, picking up Northern, Red Oak, wherever. But I guess the parent is looking at this portal, they're looking at things, and they're saying, my kid's gonna be here at 3:36. We know that's wrong, but we're not relaying that information to the parents. You're killing yourself when you're pushing out wrong information. You just admitted, we know we can't do it. We know we're gonna be late, but your portal was saying, I'm gonna pick up and leave it here. But your times are overlapping. So the one I looked at today, I knew right off the bat, and you obviously knew it, you were 34 minutes delayed, but the parents don't know that. So they're waiting for their kids, and then any hiccup that happens, I'm just concerned that our routing is not, and we looked at it last year, and I think we identified that our routing software ain't on par. I'm concerned that we're
The
repeating
routing software that we
same thing
have
last year.
is better than the one that the state has. TIMS does not do half of the things that the current routing system that we have. And I want to go back to your point. When I say that we knew, yes, we knew because we may have found out on Monday morning or Tuesday morning that a driver at Hubbard has called out. So now you got to bring in, or a driver has quit. So now you got to bring in somebody else who's going to run that route, and that person probably already has 2 other routes. But the point that I'm trying to make is that there is more nuance than what you can see just sitting on the outside looking at routes. You have to actually be in the room at the table and going through the intricate parts of routing. It's more nuanced than just sitting there looking at it. It just doesn't work that way.
Actually, it's more than us just sitting in the bus, just having bus drivers be able to do what they do.
And that I stand on. It's just not that simple. And I know the work that Mr. Byer and his team are putting in. I know how they're here after hours. I know how they're here on the weekends. And it's not that we're just making the same mistakes over and over. We are dealt a tough hand, and we're trying to do the very best we can with a very tough hand. Yes.
So this this is at the beginning of the year, so hoping maybe, just maybe, if there is any way we can track the instructional hours being missed due to these bus delays until things can get a little bit better, maybe like a monthly report out of the instructional hours missed.
Absolutely.
Nothing is our fondest, so maybe we can use that data to go to people and say, hey, look, this is what our children are missing because of some flawed processes that we have no control over. And maybe that'll start opening some eyes. I can't imagine what our scores would be from last year had people been in classes a little bit more.
Absolutely, we can do that.
So that's what I was hoping for, is maybe a report out monthly of the instructional hours our children are in fact missing.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Piggyback on that, Steve, I think that's a great observation you just said. And we take that data and we talk to, I know it's what you're alluding to, take to the people that's making the decisions that we deal with every day, that we should be talking to. From a legislative side or from your representative side, you talk to them and say, hey, we're missing X amount of seat hours for our students in the classroom because we don't have enough bus drivers to, well, we're at like 75% efficient when it comes to bus drivers. You can't run a plant off 75. You guys, you do it.
And again, I want to say to the board, I've been in this business, this is 28 years for me. I don't run from any tough situation. Anything that's mine to own, I'm going to own it. That's who I am. But again, I'm going to say, Transportation Department has been dealt a tough hand. And Mr. Byer and his team are doing the very best they can to work through a tough situation. And I empathize with the parents. I truly do. It must be incredibly frustrating as a parent for what they're having to go through. And what we want to do is make sure that as soon as possible, we can get it resolved. But at the end of the day, it comes down to bodies. We got to have drivers. And as DMV does something different, or the state does something different, Nash County Public School is going to continue to be in this situation because, as I just shared with you, I will put my paycheck on it.
I wrote that down.
I'll put my paycheck on it. Of those 28 people, I guarantee, no, I'll put my paycheck on it. Less than 10 of them will have a license at the end of this year. Unless DMV does something different.
Ladies first.
He's Franklin's got his hand up. I know you're going to say the same thing.
You know, back in the day, when we had high school drivers, the state came out and said there was commuter wrecks and all this stuff. But it goes back to what I said, we can find our high school principals, because we used to do it, we find drivers in high school that are responsible and fulfill their duties. They've got to be in school every day. They're going to drive that bus. They'd rather drive a bus than work at McDonald's or Hardee's. I've seen
The kids would love to do it.
Yeah.
But they can't get through DMV.
That's right. They would love to do it.
Enough parents speak out.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
So I want to know, Dr. Farrell, so is it possible that the drivers we do have, okay, can they work as many, have we opened the floor up for them to work more hours, or are there labor laws preventing them from working over a certain amount of hours?
I'll say this and I'll let Mr. Byers speak to it. We have drivers I know who go into overtime. And, you know, for a long time when we had drivers, that was one of the things that we didn't want to do. But now our hands are tied. And, you know, if someone is willing to drive, we want them on the bus. The problem is, to the point that Mr. Bissett was making, is what we call lapse time. So you know that if a high school route starts at 5:15 in the morning, and 5:30 in the morning, and it's due to get to the school at, let's say, 6:45. Children can't go in the building until 6:50. So the kids come off the bus at 6:50. Now we know they have to run an elementary route. They're gonna leave at 6:50 or somewhere around that time. They're gonna run an elementary route. That elementary route, especially if you're out on the southern end, that might be another hour and 30 minutes. another hour and 40 minutes. So when that bus pulls up, it's gonna be pulling up right about to the time when school is supposed to start. And now that person's gotta get those kids off, and now they have to go run a middle school route. And now, middle school is starting in 30 minutes, and the bus route is an hour and 20 minutes. And so those are the things we're running into. And when you put that in the afternoons, that means we're not picking sometimes kids up until 4:30 because we can't find a driver, so a person's having to do 3 routes. So we're picking children up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and then they're not getting home till 6:30. And again, I've had, my children went through public school. My children rode the bus. As a parent, it has to be incredibly frustrating. And I'm not trying to take away from that. What I'm saying is that Mr. Byer and his team are working the very best they can to try to alleviate as much of this as possible. Yes, ma'am.
And I want to applaud them because you're right, it's not an easy job, but if you get this group the data we need, we will make noise in Raleigh. And I think if this board starts making noise, maybe Edgecombe and some of the other boards around us will collect their data, because when you start missing instructional hours, I think they might have a good argument to bring the student drivers back. Because I agree with him, they were very effective and fairly safe. We didn't have, I recall, 18-year-olds were able to go to Vietnam back in that time. They were responsible to drive that bus and did a good job. So give us the data. I, for one, will get on the phone and I'll email and I'll write. And I guess the others that have done that too. So this is a good issue for us to make some. We went to Raleigh one time. Maybe we ought to get them to go to Raleigh.
We'll certainly make that part of our
We're gonna put you on a yellow school bus.
Yeah, give us the
It might be a little late, but we'll get you on the school bus.
Give us the data. We'll go to work for y'all.
Mrs. Byer, am I lying about the training time?
Oh, no, I know.
So I do think we're in a perfect storm though too, We got a student information system that just dropped. I know we've had issues with pushing out phone calls because the way the data, whatever data does, I don't know, Tremaine can answer that one. You've got, it's the first 10 days. Remember last year, Mr. Byer and his team started talking to the bus drivers, talking to the APs about pushing routes in. Who's not riding your bus? Who's doing that? That's gonna have to take place after 10 days. He already knows that. So, and what doesn't help is, I think you can learn how to drive an 18-wheeler to California in 3 weeks and get a license, and it takes a bus driver almost a year. And until we can fix that, I think, and I congratulate the board because we talked about the TAs getting paid. They're getting paid. Problem is, just sitting there waiting to get trained. For a whole year, they've been waiting to get trained.
So Donovan made a great point, and that point was, if we lobby the folks that we need to lobby, and that's the job of a board member, not do all this other stuff, but lobby people that we can give these folks help. Because I know what you guys are doing, I've seen it. Been in the garage, been at the school, and it's, as Donovan said, it's from the coast to the mountains. So you're not alone in the problems you're dealing with. You're not by yourself. That's not by yourself.
All right, if there are no further questions, we can move on. I just wanted to say thank you, Dr. Farrell and Mr. Byer. It's a very difficult situation to be in, and I want to also make sure that we mention that you came to us with accountability first and foremost. So thank you for that. And we understand it is difficult, so we'll work through that together. And so next, we'll talk about school safety.
Dr. Farrell might want some water.
You did good, Dr. Farrell. Dr. Farrell, you did very good.
You back up there.
I'm telling you.
Not quite there yet, Dr. Farrell.
You want me to read this one? You want me to read this one? I'll read this one.
Can you make it a little bigger, Mr. McQueen? Thank you, sir. So I know many of the board members were interested in what we were going to do for our elementary schools in terms of wanding or having them walk through the metal detector process. And as you all remember, when we initially started having this conversation back during the 23 school year. We started with middle and high schools. And the thing that Dr. Ellis was adamant about was that if we used a metal detector to screen all children, is that it would set back the time for school starting, because metal detectors is just not a fluid process for moving a bunch of students, a lot of students through. So we did the evolve machine for middle and high. As you know, those evolve machines cost us about $1.7 million. We did not have another $1.7 million to bring in 12 evolve machines for our elementary settings. So what we have done to start out the school year is doing a random wanding screening process like we did with the high school. We pulled together a group of elementary principals, and they spanned throughout the district because we wanted to make sure that we covered the entire district. And we talked about what that process would look like. We then took that information back to all of our elementary principals. We received feedback from them, and then we brought the team back together again, and then we created a final document, and then we had a meeting with all of the elementary principals, and we went through it to make sure that we all were on the same page. So starting on September the 9th, our elementary schools will participate in a random wanding screening process each week. Just like with the high schools, we're talking about approximately 10% of their student population that they're expected to screen. And that means whether they're riding the bus, whether they are walkers, or whether they are car riders. They have to have a random process to ensure that they're not, picking on a kid or singling children out. And we also have a form that each school has to complete so that if it's ever called to question, we have documentation as to what our process is. The other thing that we've done is we've purchased a hand wand for all of our elementary schools. A few of them had them, a lot of them didn't, but we purchased a hand wand for every elementary school. They're getting those this week. Some have already came and picked them up. Ms. Harvey sending out an email letting them know that they have to have them picked up by Friday of next week. The other thing is all of the metal detectors that we had, which were the machines that we purchased during COVID, they have a dual role. They can act as temperature readers or metal detectors. We have turned Mr. McQueen and his team have turned the metal detector side of it on. They have calibrated them to make sure that they're picking up metal detectors, and all of those are set at the front doors of our elementary schools. So our schools, when they're choosing to screen the 10% of their student population, they can run some through the metal detector, they can hand wand others. SROs, as with the middle and high schools, cannot be a part of that process. They can be in the area standing by, but they cannot be doing any of the searching of our students. Any questions for me?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I had the opportunity to watch the security system in action at Northern Nash first day, and it was awesome. And the assistant principal took the time to show me how they look at it and read it and decide, oh, this is how we address this student because what we've discovered. He did point out that it speeds up their process if heavy metal items, even water bottles or laptops are in their hand as they go through. But the kids did not slow down. It didn't impede anything. And when one child went off, it was just very smooth, moved to a table and it discovered what the item was, which in that case was water bottle.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
This is a positive one, so you.
Okay.
That was a positive. That was
I feel like I gotta say something positive after all I said earlier. But, no, I was looking at the news the other day and, I saw where some of the other high schools are just getting the Evolve.
Yes, sir.
Whereas I looked a couple days later and Heather Louise and Tedford at Nash Central were demonstrating our middle schools are already
Yes,
getting.
sir.
So I just want to give y'all kudos on, because that's the main thing,
Yes, sir.
safety to students. I mean,
Absolutely. And we're looking at a machine that's cheaper, but there's a bidding process that we have to go through. We have to try to secure funding. So I don't know when that will happen, but I'm working with Dr. Ellis, and hopefully there's something that we can come up with by the end of the school year that we can start putting in place.
Some of these SRO offices that were shared, like Nashville and Cookville. Do we have any funding where we can have like any school that's in the county? Can they have a on-site SRO?
So we, right now, we're still waiting. I was at the safety directors meeting, I think last week. And they have not, released, the funding. In fact, they are still, receiving applications, from schools, to determine the amount of money that schools will get. If you remember, I believe we received $666,000 in the safety grant, I think, for elementary and middle school SROs for 2 years. We don't know if we'll get that amount of money. We are hoping that we're going to get that. We're hoping that we're going to get more. But based on that, that formula, that money was tied to one SRO in the elementary schools working 2 schools. And the other thing in my conversation with the sheriff department and actually the police department too, because they have vacancies that they're trying to fill, to have a SRO at each of our schools right now would be a difficult pull on them. Yes, sir.
What Frankie just said, I was out at Bailey. One thing that was interesting about Bailey police is there all the time. And so that's not funding that comes out. That's due to the partnership that you guys have established with our little small towns. There's no cost to us. I mean, they're cordial working with the sheriff's department. They're there because they appreciate the leadership and the students that care of the students. So, you know, I just gotta give kudos to you guys for doing an outstanding job. This has been one of the most best opening start of school years I've ever been into. And it's going on 12 years. It's been great. For the enthusiasm, for the convocation that you guys did, and the things that went on over there, and how the excitement. I tell people it's just like going to a preaching session. When you hear a word that excites you, a song that comes out, and you get those goosebumps. I get those goosebumps when I was walking through those schools. It's just like hearing the word. Nothing like it. So kudos to you guys. Great job. I think it'll phenomenal.
And to Mr. Lamb's point, ideally, the superintendent would love to have an SRO at every school, one SRO at every school. Right now, it's just.
It's just like Mr. Sharp said, those small town police look after the school. But I know the SRO, the couplets or Hubbard, power of that radio means a whole lot.
Yeah, it does.
A lot more powerful than your phone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So has our last SRO MOU expired?
It has. Right now, the sheriff department has returned theirs. We're waiting on Rocky Mount City to return theirs. And Madam Chairwoman, don't get mad at me, but if they get theirs in by the end of the week or on Tuesday of next week, I wanted to see if it was something that we could add. But I don't know that they will because there are people who have to review it, look at it, and sign it. But we are waiting on Rocky Mount PD to return theirs. We do have the sheriff departments back in.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're muted, Ms. Thomas Bullock. We can't hear you. That's it.
Something's going on with it.
The phone. So what is left?
That was all
That
left
was
on
it.
there, just.
Okay,
motion
due to the
adjourn.
technical difficulties, I'll go ahead and close out the Student Support Services and Operations Committee meeting at this time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Board Member Sharp, seconded by Board Member Jenkins for the record. Is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please let me know by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Our final committee that will convene on this evening, thank you, Mrs. Thomas Bullock. Our final committee that will convene on this evening is the Academic Services and Accountability Committee. Vice Chair Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. Roll call. Dr. Washington.
Here.
Ms. Vincent.
Here.
Ron Thomas Bullock. Bill Sharp. Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Motion by Mr. Sharp, second.
Second.
Second by Chris Bishop. First item is the North Carolina Migrant Education Program Statement of Assurance. Mr. Dobbs.
Good evening, Board Chair Dr. Washington, Vice Chair Lamb, Superintendent Ellis, and other committee members. I stand before you to present the North Carolina Migrant Education Statement of Assurances, which is in affirmation of the instructional educational activities that we do with migrant education for our already identified migratory students. These instructional services, among others, are the in-school tutoring, after-school tutoring, summer school, and some other support services. We identify the students as a priority for services, PFS. Basically, what we are doing is providing the best of our abilities into the educational instructional activities. And when we identify the students, we are looking at the at-risk level, the not meeting the standards, and due to the mobility as well. So there's no fiscal implication on this statement. And on behalf of Dr. Ellis, I will present this statement of assurance for approval. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I make a motion, we approve the.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sharp, second by Dr. Washington. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, likewise. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. 2023-24 testing update, Mr. Mudd.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I want to thank Dr. Farrow for delivering a bunch of hard news so that I can come up after him and have something a lot less difficult to talk about. So thank you. Ms. Nancy Smith is passing out the information. Mr. McQueen, once we get to about halfway through, you can stop sharing because some of the information at the end is not for public display at the moment. That's why you have a copy. So last meeting we had, some of the information about school testing and accountability data hadn't been released yet. And so I'm coming here tonight to provide a short update on some of the information that has already been released. And everything will be fully released next week after the State Board of Education meeting on the 4th. Mr. McQueen, go ahead. So these were the goals that we discussed at the last meeting that fall underneath this department, specifically exiting low performance status. We weren't able to talk about because we didn't have all the information, along with the number of schools that exceeded growth and the growth statuses and the school grades from those schools. So we'll update those. Go ahead, Mr. McQueen. A quick update on how those are calculated. School performance grades are calculated based on a growth and proficiency metric. Proficiency accounts for 80% of the grade and growth counts for 20% of the grade. Proficiency numbers come from state testing and EL progress for elementary and middle schools, and then EOC testing, ACT, work keys, graduation, math course rigor for the high schools. And then the growth is calculated only from the state test scores for elementary and middle school, and from Math 1, Math 3, and English 2 for the high school. That's the only thing that contributes to the growth. So this is the information we had from the last meeting. Some things still be to determine, and so I'm here to update those holes for you tonight. So go ahead, Mr. McQueen. So last year in 22-23, as you recall, the school district exited low performance status, which means that less than 50% of the schools were designated as a low performing school. So for this upcoming school year, or from last school year, I guess, 23-24, Nash County Public Schools only had 4 out of 24 schools that are designated low performing. So that's 17% of the schools, much less than the 50% threshold. So that's the lowest total that has been
You say 4?
4.
How many?
24 that receive a designation.
You know what, I bet that is everywhere.
Yeah, that's great news. So that's the lowest percentage since they started issuing school performance grades for our district. Goes back to 2015, I believe. That's the lowest percentage of our schools to be designated low performing. And so that is, low performing is a school that is a D or an F and does not exceed growth. So that's how you are designated low performing. The second goal that we had on there, we didn't have information for, was the number of schools that exceeded growth. We wanted to increase that number 2 years ago, 22, 23, that number was 10 schools. Last year, 12 schools exceeded growth out of 24 again. And then the second and final thing, or third and final thing we wanted to talk about was the increase the number of schools that received a C or higher on the letter grade. The total we had from 22, 23 was 9 schools, and last year, 17 schools out of 24 received a C or higher. So quickly, we'll kind of go through, you have all this information there in front of you. You can see we kind of broken it down from the past 3 years, just so you can kind of see the trend and the progress that has been made by the hard work of the staff and the students, administrators and teachers at the school. So from 21, 22, that was the year right after, or the second year, I guess, after COVID. That was the first full year of everyone being back in school and the state giving out school performance grades, because for 2 years, the state did not designate school performance grades due to the impact of COVID. We had 63% of the schools designated as low performing. 8 schools exceeded growth, 5 schools met growth, and 11 schools did not meet growth, and you can see those there. So then as you go into 22, 23, you see that those numbers started to increase. More schools exceeded growth, more schools met growth, less schools were low performing when we exited. And then, as you can see on the information there in front of you, you can see the schools from the 23, 24 school year. No, he's good. Yeah. 23, 24 school year, you can see that we only had 4 schools designated as low performing. That's 17% of the school population. 12 schools exceeded growth. 10 schools met growth. Only 2 schools did not meet growth. And Tar River Academy received a progressing mark, which is the highest that they can receive on the alternative measure. They were maintaining the previous year, so they increased from declining to maintaining and now progressing, which is the highest they can receive. So as you've able to look there, and then the final page you have before the questions page is just all of the past 3 years in a summary snapshot, so you can kind of see over time from one school to the next on the same page. You can kind of look at that information for yourself, so you can see the progress that has been made at each individual school over the past 3 years to get us to the point we are now. So a lot of things to celebrate. As you guys have already mentioned from the information, last year was a very successful year for our students, for our staff, and the hard work that has been put in.
Have another convocation, so
Yeah, so we can do that next week after the 4th when they present all the information. It'll be public for the world to see. Everything that you guys have done and the staff has done has paid off over the past few years, the hard work, and we're looking forward to trying to build off that again this year to continue the growth.
Yeah, spite of late buses. But I'm calculating here, so I'm not showing anything, but presently in our school district, because we had 2 or 3 to leave, we have about only 9% schools that are low performing. I think that's what it is, 9.20, it's like 9-10% low performing.
Yes, the information you have is from 23, 24, so that includes
Yeah.
the schools in Edgecombe County that on the 24, 25 information will no longer be there because they're part of Edgecombe County now.
That's amazing, but those are few schools that impact our test scores and everything else. So that brought us down to some degree, but as I look at this, 21, 22, and then I look at 23, 24, I see all these reds, and I only see 2 red on the other. My hand want to shout hallelujah. Y'all did a phenomenal job. This is awesome.
Well, you walked into a good situation.
Gotta give credit to Mr. Farrell for making me look even better.
We need to thank Mr. Anderson Smith. Good.
Thank you.
I want to thank Melissa Dancy Smith's team, because I'm going to tell you, I know she won't let me say a whole lot right now, but there's going to be some things coming to this county because of what we're doing. I won't say anything yet, but there's some big things coming.
I hate to adjourn there, everybody feels pretty good.
Mr. Jenkins asked if you could keep these. These are your copies. You just cannot share them publicly outside of the school district until September 4th, around 10:30, when Dr. Howard presents to the state board and it becomes officially public, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, 'cause I know what
Without any other questions, I will adjourn the academic service accountability committee.
Thank you so much, and if there is no further business to come before this board on this evening, I'll entertain.
Dr. Washington?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just apologize. I don't know what the audio situation was, but like someone said, technology. But I just I did not realize that no one could hear me, so I said several things, but I just wanted to reiterate my thanks. Thank you to both the academics and student support services, because I was a part of both in the awesome work that they've done. But I wanted to point out, and what I was pointing out earlier, not really realizing no one could hear me, is that Dr. Farrell, when you got up, one of the first things that you said and you admitted to was accountability for the things that we need to work towards. And we need to point that out and not just move past that, because I think some of the conversation is often how difficult things are, and that is absolutely true. But we have been accountable for those things and for those gaps. And I think that needed to be pointed out. And also to point out that academically, these things do not just happen. It is intentionality and work that goes in, just like it's the same thing with the transportation and everything else. So I just wanted to say kudos and thank you for all of the hard work.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas Boyd. And if there's no further business to, yes, go ahead.
Mr. Weber, what's the penalty for sharing this information? All we do is penalized, I might be worth taking.
You can go to Food Line, Frank.
Well, I've been picking with
I'd be happy to discuss that in closed session.
But John Brown, we need to share tonight.
No, not tonight. We will shortly.
If there's no further business to come before this board on this evening, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sharp, seconded by Dr. Chavis. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please let me know by the sign of aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.